Welcome to Shaped by Faith with your host, Theresa Rowe. To find out more about Shaped by Faith and Theresa Rowe, please visit shapedbyfaith.com or visit the YouTube channel, Facebook, or Instagram. And now, here is Theresa Rowe.
Welcome to Shaped by Faith, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. My guest today is bestseller Kelly Irvin. She's the author of over 30 books. She's from San Antonio, Texas. She's written Amish romance, romantic suspense, and women's fiction. Kelly's an award-winning novelist, and she worked as a newspaper reporter before spending more than 20 years. That's a long time in public relations. Kelly now writes fiction full-time, and she's going to talk about that today. Her recent book that launched just this week, it's called The Year of Goodbyes and Hellos. And I cannot wait to hear about it. Kelly says it was one of the hardest stories she has ever written. Welcome to Shaped by Faith, Kelly.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I can't wait for you to share your story, what God has done, what he continues to do. So let's just get into your story. Before your cancer diagnosis, you were diagnosed with primary lateral sclerosis in 2015. Is that correct?
Yes, at the time, that's what they thought it was. And actually, later when I was diagnosed with cancer, the focus moved to paraneoplastic syndrome, which is basically the immune system attacking the central nervous system and trying to fight the cancer. So the symptoms are very, very similar. So it just took a period of watching and waiting to see which it was going to be.
Wow. Okay. So then in 2016, you were diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It was actually, I had the PLS diagnosis in December of 2015 and stage 4 ovarian cancer in January of 2016. So it was, just came one after another, and it was just an overwhelmingly difficult season in my life. I had always been extremely healthy up to that point. I went to the doctor once a year for my pelvic and pap smear and that sort of thing, and really didn't give my health a lot of thought until I discovered that I was having trouble lifting my feet. That's how it started. I was having difficulty doing aerobics that I had been doing for years. I was a very active person, and then suddenly I couldn't pick up my feet to do those aerobic dance moves that I had been doing. So it was quite a shock.
So does that go along with the diagnosis of ovarian cancer? Like losing your mobility?
Well, and that's the issue, is that, PLS is diagnosed by the process of elimination, much in the same way that ALS is. And so they based on my symptoms, thought that's what it was. Mm-hmm. But with that diagnosis of cancer, they explained to me that there's also something called paraneoplastic syndrome that happens to your nervous system when you have cancer and your immune system can't handle it. So, I had trouble lifting my feet. I had pain in my hands and my feet. I had pain in my neck. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that's very difficult to diagnose. So they sent me to a neurosurgeon who decided that it was caused by my scoliosis, and he did back surgery, and I had titanium rods, and it was another year before I was diagnosed with the motor neuron disease. And that's quite common with people who have ALS, mm-hmm. that it takes a long time for them to focus on what the actual problem is, and people get sent to various different specialists until finally they hit on the neurologist who recognizes what it is.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you were doing everything right up to this point. You said you were doing exercise, you were doing aerobics.
Yes.
Most likely you were eating healthy most of the time. You didn't think a thing about it. So obviously this health diagnosis had to shake your faith.
It was very difficult. And some people are surprised that it was actually the loss of my mobility that was more difficult for me to accept, because I was such an active person, and I just, I went to church, I did mission work. I had a strong Sunday school class. I had all those things, but it wasn't a faith that had been tested, certainly not in this way. And I really, at a certain point, had to ask myself if I would really had faith, or was I just going through the motions? Because it was so very difficult for me to understand how, in my mind, God could let this happen. And so I did go through a season where I really struggled with my faith. But I had some, good, strong support, especially from my Sunday school class. And I remember my Sunday school teacher saying, do you believe that God is good? And I said, yes. And she said, well, that hasn't changed. God doesn't change. He's still good in the season of trials. Scripture says he can bring good from all things. So you have to accept that and live by it. And that's what I've been trying to do, and here I am almost 8 years later, still here and still writing, and God is still good.
Yes, he is still good. Wow, that's incredible. That is so good that you had that support system in your Sunday school. I'm sure there's people out there that go through things and they don't have that support system.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how they make it through.
I don't either.
Yeah. I mean, that would be so difficult, especially if you don't have that faith aspect there. But God knew your story. He wrote it. He knows it. So he knew what you needed. So, okay, Kelly, how in the world did you write more than 30 novels while you're going through cancer treatment? And maybe you want to answer that after you let us know what kind of treatments. I mean, I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah. Well, I did, I went through surgery and chemotherapy. I was in what we would call remission for a short period, and then it happened again. There was progression. I did chemotherapy again, and it's gone on like that. Once you have metastatic cancer, you're going to be in treatment for the rest of your life. And the statistics for ovarian cancer are pretty grim. Stage 4, it's something like 17% of women live past 5 years. But I was acutely aware of that. And because of my health problems, I had to retire from my job. But that turned out to be the silver lining. It allowed me to fulfill my my lifelong dream of writing fiction full time. And for me, writing has been the key to everything. I just enjoy it so much. It gives me that reason to get up in the morning and persevere, and it's a joy. People often wonder how I could continue to write, but I can't imagine what I would have done if I couldn't write. If that wasn't my calling, and and I've ultimately come to recognize that writing is a God gift, and He has work for me to do, and I honestly believe that's the reason I'm still here, long past what I jokingly call my expiration date. My husband doesn't think that's all that funny, but
yes, okay.
I continue to write these books, and ultimately it led to the writing of the book that we're going to talk about today. So, writing 30 books was everything that held me together during this long season of medical challenges.
Well, that makes sense to me because it's, for one, God gave you that gifting. He placed that in you. Obviously, He was preparing you for that anyway, being a newspaper reporter before, and also working in public relations. All those things kind of help, in the field of writing. But for you to use that also, I'm going to say sort of like a stress reliever.
Absolutely.
When you say it brought you joy, like some people like to garden and that's a stress reliever. I choose exercise and that's my gifting as a stress reliever. So I think, wow, God, look what you did, and look what you're continuing to do. And it's just, you had to do it though, Kelly. You had to go to it. You had to do the work. You had to choose to say, yeah, yes, Lord, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it for your glory. And I think that's what separates a person from being in God's will and not being in His will. just stepping up to the plate, doing the work that needs to be done. We're going to take a real quick break here. We'll be back with more Shaped by Faith. Everyone stay tuned. Welcome back to Shaped by Faith. My guest today is best-selling author Kelly Irvin, and Kelly's new book, we're going to talk about that, The Year of Goodbyes and Hellos. So Kelly, you say writing this book was hard for you. Can you explain that?
Yeah, actually, it was the hardest book I've ever written in many respects, but also the easiest in one respect, and that is that I just started writing and it just poured out. But in order to write it, I had to go back to the days of when I was diagnosed and what it was like to get that news that I had stage 4 ovarian cancer, and the years that I've continued to go through with CT scans and PET scans and lab draws, and just continuous challenges with the side effects and losing my hair twice. People tend to think that's maybe not such a big deal, but for many women, including myself, it was a very big deal.
Yes.
But all the various difficult side effects that you encounter with the various different chemotherapies, all of that I had to draw upon it as basically my research for this book. The main character is an oncologist. Her sister is diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and so Kristen jumps off the career track to walk through this season with her sister and to do all she has to do in terms of treatment. And in order to do that, I had to use the knowledge that I had gained in this 7+ years of being in treatment to tell the story. And it's not just the physical or medical aspects, but the emotional and spiritual havoc that kind of disease and treatment can do to you, and not just to the patient, but to the family. And in the case of this book, the family has a lot of mending offenses that they have to do because the clock is ticking. And I understand that feeling of, the clock is clanging in your head, and how much are you going to be able to do, and how much time are you going to be able to spend with family? All of those things play a part in how the story unfolds in this book. And I think having been through it all and continuing to go through it is what makes this book so difficult to write, but I think also what it will touch people who read it, who've had cancer, who've had family members of cancer, or who don't, and need a better understanding of what it's like.
So, Kelly, did you write this book? For one, that would be hard to go back and revisit what you went through with your chemo and 7 years in treatment. And like you said, the family. I mean, it's not just you, it's your entire family and people that know you. Did you feel that the information and what you went through was so important that you needed to get out there in a story? Or why did you write your book?
Well, there were several reasons. I think it's really important for women to stop and think about ovarian cancer, because a lot of women think when they go to the doctor and get a pelvic and a pap smear that they're being screened for ovarian cancer, and they're not. There is no screening tool, and that's why it's so deadly. It's almost something like 77% of the time or more, it's diagnosed in late stages because the symptoms can be other things. Things like feeling full and bloated, having pelvic pain, not being able to eat, just things that might be more of a stomach problem, basically. And so I wanted to get the message out to women to pay attention to their bodies and talk to their doctors and advocate for themselves, and know that there are symptoms that you have to be aware of them and looking for them, because oftentimes doctors will just sort of dismiss it as IBS or some other stomach problem that makes it so that eventually it gets to the point where you can't, it's too late. And that's what you want. early detection is critical in any kind of cancer. And gynecological cancer, ovarian cancer is the most deadly of gynecological cancers because it's so often found in the later stages.
Well,
So it was important.
yeah. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
No, I was going to say it was important in that respect, but I think it's also important um, to explore the spiritual impacts of having a terminal disease, and how do we hang on to our faith, and how do we hang on to hope. And those are two really important threads that are woven into the story as well.
That is so good. Let's circle back because I also want to address what you just said, the spiritual impact. Let's circle back to the symptoms that you were mentioning. I mean, when you say feeling full pelvic pain, maybe stomach upset, I mean, you think about that and you're like, you kind of dismiss it because
Yeah,
you're like, that's normal, or you're told, oh, you've got PMS or IBS or something like that.
exactly.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I went through that with my heart. I had no clue I had 3 holes in my heart. So
oh my goodness.
I kept going back to the doctor saying something's off, something's not right. You have to be your own advocate, even if the doctor dismisses you. Find another
Yes.
doctor, find find someone who will listen to you, because I went through this for over a year in Omaha, Nebraska, and it wasn't good. No one was listening to me. They dismissed it. So for
I
one,
think
be your,
women face that much more than men do.
yes, I do.
There's this, fatigue, back pain, pain during intercourse, um, bladder infections. That women talk about these things, and they're sort of dismissed as women problems.
Right. You're
So,
right.
um,
So how do they find it, Kelly? How do they find out? You say early detection is the key. So how
yeah. Well,
does a doctor find that out?
unfortunately,
Yeah.
well, in my case, I was going to an oncologist to manage a series of mammograms that were irregular, and so
Okay.
we were dealing with the potential for um, breast cancer. But I was having all these neurological problems, and I saw a study that showed that sometimes cancer could result in neurological problems. And I was telling my oncologist about it, and she said, "Well, let's just do a chest, because lung cancer is one of them." She said, "We'll just do a chest CT scan as a baseline." Well, that chest CT scan showed pockets of growth, tumors in the lining of my lungs.
Wow.
And so then I had a PET scan, and that showed that it had originated in my ovaries. And that tells you how much it had spread before they found it. Um, Mostly, there's a blood test that can be done, and then a pelvic ultrasound that can be done. The blood test isn't very dependable, and so that's why they don't like to use it as a marker. But that's all there is at this point.
So
The
you said
symptoms
a
and
pelvic ultrasound, Kelly, as well?
uh-huh, uh-huh. You can do and then they can do CT scans and things like that. But by the time you get to a CT scan, then it's big enough for them to see it. It's not like some cancers that you can find more quickly before it's full blown. And that's why I had some here in 2023. They say that over 19,000 cases of ovarian cancer will be diagnosed in the United States. There will be 13,000 deaths from ovarian
Oh,
cancer. It's the
wow.
fifth leading cause of cancer deaths, and 5% of all female cancer deaths. So it's one of those things that we really have to advocate for ourselves, but also support research. And that's one of the things that I have to mention, is that one of the reasons I'm still here is because I'm able to go to a phase 1 clinical trial clinic, where I'm in a clinical trial. It's in San Antonio, it's close by, and I'm in a clinical trial that's working.
Mm,
So supporting research and being willing to get into clinical trials to help that research is something that we can all think about.
that's good. Okay, let's take another break. We'll be right back with Kelly Irvin. Everyone stay tuned. Welcome back to Shaped by Faith. Best-selling author Kelly Irvin is talking about her new book that came out this week, The Year of Goodbyes and Hellos. So, Kelly, how will your book help others hang on to their faith in the face of adversity?
I think a lot of it has to do with Sherry, the main character who has ovarian cancer, and how she approaches it. She's a faithful believer. She's a school teacher. She has kids. She's physically active, and this when this diagnosis comes down the pike, I'm pretty impressed with how well she handles it. A lot better than her sister Kristen, who is an oncologist who, of course, knows a lot more about what Sherry's facing. But um, Sherry uses it as an opportunity um, to mend a broken relationship with their father, and to spend time with her children, her grandchildren, and to mend a relationship with her ex-husband. And they're still very close, and there's obviously a lot of love there, and there's an opportunity for them to to reconcile some of their past differences. And it also, Kristen is not a Christian, and this journey that she's on with her sister really helps her to reevaluate her priorities. She's been all about her career, even though she's 2 kids. She's neglected her marriage. She's estranged from her father. And so all of those things come to a head as she goes through this journey with her sister. And I think the way she handles it and ultimately how she responds will speak to readers, because all of us are flawed, and all of us have these difficult family situations that we need to deal with, and we keep putting it off because we think we have time. Well, that's not always the case.
You're right.
So we need to take a hard look at ourselves before these kind of medical crises fall into our lives.
That's so true. When someone's given a diagnosis like you were given, I mean, and even with my heart going on, the holes in the heart, you figure out what's really important in your life, and it's not what you're going to wear the next day, or you've got a blemish on your face. Those things don't matter at all. It comes down to, spiritually speaking, our faith in Christ and family relationships. And so that's so good that your book addresses mending family relationships. I think there's so many broken relationships out there, that need mending, and we need someone to take that first step. So how would you? Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
And we need to take a look at our priorities in terms of how we spend our time.
You're right.
And the
That's
importance
it.
of our. It's very, very difficult, especially for women who try to be it all and do it all.
Right.
How do we do that?
How would you describe your book as a journey and reason to hope?
There's a reason to hope, because all things are possible in Christ, and He will be there with you throughout the journey. He's holding your right hand, and He's helping you to face whatever you have to face. You're not alone. I think that's Sherry knows that, and Kristen figures it out before all things come to pass. And we just have to squarely place our lives and our futures in the hands of the one who loves us.
Absolutely. What do you want your readers to take away from your book?
Well, I think it's what we've been talking about, that nothing is more important than than shoring up your faith and knowing that it's strong in times when you're going to need that strength. And nothing's more important than family, and being forgiving and seeking forgiveness. Nothing's more important than spending time with our children and our spouses, and take care of your health, advocate for your health. those are all things that I think messages that you'll find in the year of goodbyes and hellos.
That's so good. So, Kelly, what's next for you? Do you have another book that you're writing?
Well, I'm still writing Amish romances, but I am pivoting toward women's fiction, and I have another women's fiction project that I'm getting ready to share with my publisher. And and depending on how this book does, I'm hoping that there will be more women's fiction, and particularly dealing. This particular project that I'm working on deals with how we deal with disability. Physical disabilities, especially as women who are aging, and how we're perceived by society and the world.
That's good. Now, you write primarily for women, is that correct?
The romantic suspense books are written by both men, or I'm sorry, are read by both men and women. And I do have a few men who read the Amish romances. I think that there's room for men to read this book if they don't shy away from it being called women's fiction.
Correct. Well, and they can apply it to anything.
Absolutely.
You can apply this to anything. So, Kelly, where do we find your newest book and your other books?
It's available wherever books are sold online, and I urge people to check out my website at kellyirvin.com for all three genres that I've been writing in. And there's lots of good information there. And I'm on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X.
That's right.
Yeah. And I'm just getting my feet wet in TikTok, but that's a whole nother topic.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Okay. Kelly, you were so enjoyable. Thank you so much. And thanks for giving us some amazing information about the symptoms of ovarian cancer and maybe some things that we can do to find out. And we definitely want to purchase your book, The Year of Goodbyes and Hellos. So thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening, everyone. Have a good day. Blessings. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Shaped by Faith with Theresa Rowe. Remember to visit shapebyfaith.com to find out more about workouts, the TV show, podcasts, blogs, Shaped by Faith products, and much more.